Hey guys, it's Chris. Cleopatra is one of history's most legendary rulers, but you might not know as much about her as you think. I was obsessed with the Egyptian gods and culture when I was a kid, so I'm stoked to deep dive here. Let's get into it. 9 things you didn't know about Cleopatra. Number 9. She wasn't Egyptian. Historically, rulers of a nation have to have been 1. Born there, and 2. Descending from royal blood. However, Cleopatra only possessed one of these traits. She was born in Egypt, but she was not Egyptian herself. When tracing her family lineage, she learned that she was descended from Ptolemy Soter of Macedonian Greece. Ptolemy Soter was a general to Alexander the Great and became the ruler of Egypt when Alexander died in 323 BC. For nearly 3 centuries thereafter, Egypt was governed by a dynasty of Greek-speaking rulers. For the first 6 generations of the Ptolemaic line, the rulers' wives also came from a Macedonian background, and the dynasty's ethnic makeup was pure Macedonian Greek. Cleopatra's grandfather had 2 Macedonian wives and a mistress whose ethnicity is unknown. And if his mistress was Cleopatra's grandmother, then this may mean that Cleopatra was of a mixed ethnic background. It's also possible that Cleopatra's mother was not Macedonian, but part of the Egyptian religious elite. This would make sense, since intermarriage between this group and the Ptolemaic dynasty was not uncommon. In a post for Oxford University's official blog, archaeologist Dwayne W. Roller wrote that Cleopatra was most likely either pure Macedonian Greek or mostly Macedonian Greek with some Egyptian blood. Cleopatra was one of the first members of the Ptolemaic line to learn Egyptian, and she fully embraced the country's culture and customs. Number 8. She practiced incest. In the ancient world, and indeed some societies today, bloodlines are said to be more important than wealth, land, and influence. So it may not be a surprise to hear that Cleopatra's family line, which again started with Ptolemy, participated in incest. At the time, this was a common and accepted practice among royals around the world, as they believed it maintained the purity of their bloodline, and they were unaware of the genetic risks that came with it. Several of Cleopatra's ancestors married their cousins, and at least 2 married their sisters. It's also possible that her grandfather married his sister, and Cleopatra's parents may have been siblings as well. Although she's best known for her relationships with Mark Antony and Julius Caesar, Cleopatra also married and had sexual relations with 2 of her brothers, thus continuing her pure bloodline. This was more than just a simple purity act, however. The brothers that Cleopatra married were her co-regents who acted in her stead when she was away from the throne. Number 7. She was very intelligent. While a ruler being smart is not strange, intelligence isn't something people typically associate with Cleopatra, who went down in history for her ability to be ruthless when she deemed it necessary, and for her sexuality. It was even believed throughout ancient Egypt that her beauty made her a descendant of the gods, specifically Isis. But Cleopatra had beauty and brains. She knew up to a dozen languages and was well versed in a variety of subjects, including astronomy and philosophy. She also kept and enjoyed the company of scholars. Cleopatra's intelligence was reflected in her leadership skills and the many years she spent as a pharaoh. Before she took the throne, several women had ruled over Egypt before, but most of them did not remain in power for long, and their reigns often came to tragic ends. Even Cleopatra's brothers who ruled alongside her lacked her abilities, as evidenced by her decision to handle international relations on her own. She conveniently took advantage of the popular belief that her beauty elevated her to the status of a goddess to persuade people, and that provided her strategic abilities. Number 6. Sibling rivalry. As mentioned earlier, Cleopatra married 2 of her brothers. Well, she also found a way to get rid of them. Her first brother husband was Ptolemy XIII, but she wanted the throne to herself, and he drove her out of Egypt when she tried to take it. Cleopatra teamed up with Julius Caesar and faced off with Ptolemy in a civil war. And after being defeated in battle, he drowned in the Nile River. Or was drowned, it's kind of hard to say. After the war, she returned to Egypt and married her younger brother, Ptolemy XIV. But like her first marriage, things didn't last long between them. It's believed that Cleopatra poisoned him to death so that her son could become co-regent instead. She also had Mark Antony murder her sister Arsinoe in 41 BC after deeming her to be a rival for the throne when rebellion started. However gruesome this may seem to someone living in the modern age, it actually wasn't uncommon for family members competing for power in the ancient world to just execute their rivals. Just look at any ruling family in any country in history. And if you're looking for some fictional backup, you can just look at Game of Thrones. Number 5. Her makeup had medicinal properties. The ancient Egyptians were known for their ability to apply an alluring smoky eye using thick black and green makeup, but these cosmetics had more than just aesthetic benefits. In a 2010 National Geographic article, writer Kate Revilius discussed the recent findings of French researchers, which indicated that the makeup worn by ancient Egyptians helped protect against eye infections. Ancient Egyptian manuscripts described the makeup as magical, claiming that the wearer was protected from illnesses by the gods Horus and Ra. Now, it would have been common for people living along the Nile's tropical marshes to contract eye infections, such as conjunctivitis. But thanks to low levels of 4 lead-based compounds that were detected in their makeup, some of that was avoided. The lead-based compounds boosted the body's production of nitric oxide, which helps fight off disease-causing bacteria by stimulating the immune system. That's pretty cool. Number 4. She owned a perfume factory. Perfumes and oils were popular among the ancient Egyptians for religious rituals as protection from the sun and to mask body odor. Cleopatra is rumored to have owned an entire perfume factory near the Dead Sea, which would have resembled what we think of as a spa. Mark Antony allegedly gifted her the land that the profitable factory was located on, and she may have used its proceeds to fund shipbuilding for her lover. This is one among several indications historians have found that the relationship between Cleopatra and Mark Antony may have been more transactional and mutually beneficial than romantic and steamy. In other words, in exchange for giving her land for the expansion of the Egyptian kingdom, she helped fund his war efforts. Customers could receive a variety of beauty treatments there, including essential oils and body massages. Number 3. Great at international relations. Cleopatra used her femininity and divine status advantageously to help her get what she wanted. Julius Caesar arrived in Egypt in 48 BC, while Cleopatra and her brother were at war. She knew that Ptolemy's forces would interfere with any outward attempts she made to visit with the Roman general, so she had herself wrapped in an ornamental carpet and delivered to his quarters. Apparently, Caesar fell head over heels when he saw the glamorously clad queen, and the two quickly became allies and lovers. In 41 BC, she made a grand entrance for Mark Antony when he summoned her to Tarsus for a meeting. According to the writers of Plutarch, she arrived in a golden barge that was being rowed with silver oars and had purple sails and was made up to look like the goddess Aphrodite. Attendants dressed as Cupid fanned her and burned incense as she sat underneath a gilded canopy, wearing the robes of Isis. Antony, who also considered himself to be a deity, was enchanted by what he saw and agreed to protect Cleopatra's crown and kill her sister Arsinoe, who was in exile at the time. They began the first of 2 affairs they would have together throughout their lifetimes. Guys, first impressions are everything. Number 2. Caesar's death. Cleopatra and Julius Caesar maintained a somewhat discreet relationship before the birth of their son Caesarion on June 23, 47 BC. After Caesarion was born, Caesar remained quiet about the baby, while Cleopatra openly declared who her son's father was on multiple occasions. Sometime between 46 and 45 BC, Cleopatra traveled to Rome with Caesarion and her brother Ptolemy XIV to be closer to Caesar. Once in Rome, Cleopatra and Ptolemy were granted the legal status of friend and ally of the Roman people, which meant that they were loyal to Rome and considered client rulers. While Caesar may have welcomed Cleopatra to Rome, not everyone else was super fond of her presence. When Caesar erected a gilded statue of his lover in the temple of Venus Genitrix, the reaction among Roman citizens wasn't particularly favorable, and Cleopatra fled Rome after Caesar was stabbed to death in 44 BC in the Roman Senate. However, even if the Romans didn't like Cleopatra, they certainly liked her style enough to imitate her hair and jewelry and turned her look into a fashion trend. Number 1. She formed a drinking club with Mark Antony. Although the relationship between Cleopatra and Mark Antony had a business-like component, they also happened to really enjoy spending time together. During the winter of 41 to 40 BC, they lived an overindulgent and leisurely lifestyle together in Alexandria, and even formed a drinking club known as the Inimitable Livers. Club activities consisted mainly of feasting and binging on wine every night, as well as occasional games and contests that the members participated in. According to some historical accounts, one of the couple's favorite things to do was dress up in disguises and play pranks on residents as they wandered through the streets drunk. However, other researchers believe the club was a group dedicated to the cult of the god Dionysus. Thanks for watching! Did you learn some new things about Cleopatra? I know I did. Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.